Hi, Justin. You're an explorer, adventurer, educator, and author of 2 books. The Ultimate Explorer's Guide for Kids and the Ultimate Mapping Guide for Kids. And you're also a professional speaker.
Choose all of the above or any of the above. Depends on the
day. Well, I'm glad you've accepted our invitation to talk at our up-and-coming Positive Psychology in Practice conference, which has been held on the 24th and 25th of October in Utrecht, Netherlands, where you'll be discussing resilience, the explorer's mindset.
That's right. It's quite an exciting prospect, something different to the norm.
Excellent. So if you could just start by telling me what are your current plans? Do you have any adventures planned or anything in
this
pipeline?
Year is excuse me, this year I'm doing a few little adventures around Europe, in and around Europe, just to demonstrate accessibility of outdoor space and some of the wonderful things that we can do here in Europe. And then I could hopefully be off to around July, out towards Borneo, and then back into East Africa again later in the year.
Oh, wow. So it's quite a full agenda. How do you fit all this in with your private life, all this traveling? And
it's all kind of blurs into one, private life, work life, passion for adventure, passion for education. It all kind of blurs together, so that there are no clearly defined edges. You're as likely to find me set at my laptop at 2 in the morning as 2 in the afternoon.
Excellent. And what are your favorite places that you've been to?
That's an almost impossible question to answer, right? The whole world is an awesome place. And I like all sorts of different places and different environments for different reasons. My adventures have taken me through polar, mountain, jungle, and desert regions, obviously urban environments, aquatic environments. And I don't think there's any one that I could pick out and say, yeah, that's my favorite.
But are there any like environments that are your favorite? Like some people may prefer sort of the heat to rather a cold environment, or?
But I've got to admit, sometimes sort of when you are in a very cold environment, it's fun for a minute, and then you start thinking, I wish I was somewhere hot.
Yeah,
and then you get somewhere really hot in a jungle or rainforest, and you start thinking, yeah, I wish I was somewhere really cold. So spreading myself around those different environments doesn't do me a lot of favors, because I always want something that I'm not actually in.
The grass is always greener, as they say.
Totally.
Do you travel alone, or do you go in a group of people, or do you have a partner that you go on adventures with?
That varies tremendously. The biggest team I've been away with is 10. I've been away with just me and one partner. The last couple of expeditions I've been on my own. I've met people when I've been away, so it's an interesting life.
Oh, I bet. Well, why don't you tell me about how you really got into this, the early years? So a little bit about the little Justin and what your childhood was like, key moments, turning points.
The little Justin isn't much different from the Justin now, really. I'm not particularly tall. So no, but when I was younger, I was sort of born and bred in a very tiny village where everybody knew everybody's business. And somebody in the village went off to climb Everest and unfortunately didn't make it. And that sparked an interest, not the fact they didn't make it, but the fact people got to do stuff. And I thought that's really cool. So then at home, the stairs became a mountain. My mum's house plants became a jungle. Back in the 70s, so all kitchens were beige and the kitchen floor became a desert. So it was very much that kind of life in the very early years. Then I took it outdoors. I lived in the southwest, so we had moors and rivers and lakes. And then as I got older, I started to travel across Europe and then into West Indies, Central South America. At the age of 26, I had a bit of a life-changing incident, and that's when I turned my passion for adventure into my profession.
Okay, tell us about this life-changing incident that you had. Is this the car accident?
It is. At the age of 26, I had a car crash. The car accident left me with brain injuries, which resulted in having to learn all basic functions from walking, talking, feeding myself all over again. So I had to relearn all my motor skills and balance, and like I said, learn how to speak.
Wow. And how long was that recovery?
That's difficult to put a timeline on it. I was up and moving in probably 9 or 10 months. I was up and moving properly and running. Did a marathon, but full recovery took a lot longer, and it was more to do with the psychological and emotional recovery than physical.
Right. Because I mean, I had a head injury myself, nothing as drastic as your car accident, but I found it changed my psychology, even my dreams. All of a sudden, I felt a lot more vulnerable because I had this big bang on my head, and I found it quite profound, and it took me about 1 year to 2 years to get over it.
It's the challenge that faces all of us that have experienced a brain injury. It's an invisible injury, so people will look and they would look at me and think, okay, you're running, you're going back to the gym, you must have recovered, but I hadn't. I was far from it, and it took years, and I'm still a very different person now to before the injury. It kind of took years before I not recovered, but got used to the new me.
Okay, and how would you say it changed you?
It changed the way that I act and react in different situations. It changed the way that I look at life, which is a bit fluffy. A really good example is before the accident, I was quite analytical and driven by numbers and filling in forms and all that kind of thing. But post-accident, if I look at numbers, it's just a blur. I don't get excited by numbers anymore. I do tend to struggle with that kind of thing.
And is that because a part of your brain was damaged, or you took on a new mindset?
Because part of my brain was damaged. When you look at people that have had brain injuries, many of us go through exactly the same. So if you are a numbers-based person, you might change and no longer be a numbers-based person, or vice versa.
Interesting. So in a sense, you kind of, as you relearn all your new skills, you kind of learned a new personality.
Very much so. It took a long time for me to learn and appreciate that my personality was different, because I had to challenge and question absolutely everything that I did for many years. And then I got to a point where I had to accept that I was no longer the person I was before, that I had to change and adapt, go with this new persona.
And was that a difficult change, or did you embrace it?
No, it was a very difficult change, turbulent times, very stressful times for me and the people around me. It cost me relationships and friendships. But I think I've come out the other side of it a much better person.
Okay. So it was like the person you were supposed to be rather than the person you were.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm far more conscious now of my actions and reactions and the effect that I can have on people around me than I ever used to be.
Okay. So in a sense, your accident was a really positive, life-changing experience.
Absolutely. It was negative in some ways, but the positives were fantastic. It made me very driven. In the early days of my recovery, the drive it wasn't about bravery. In the early stages, the drive came from fear that I wouldn't be able to run around and do all the things that I've done before. After that, then it became anger. So I became very angry about the position that I was in. And then you go through the whole, almost like a grieving process to acceptance. But so physically, I'm almost...
What were you angry about? Losing the previous personality, or?
All kinds of things. The previous personality, the physicality that I thought would never come back, but now has. I do have some long-term health problems that stem from the car accident, but I live with it.
Okay, so that brings me on to sort of the next thing I wanted to talk about, was the resilience, because this resilience is sort of thrown around quite a lot nowadays. Is that when you first sort of started to think about resilience, or? No,
it's much later. And like I said, back in the early days, I was quite selfish in what I did, because I had to be really to get through it, and became quite not an introvert, but inward looking. And it wasn't until later when I kind of look back on it and the lessons that I learned through my recovery, and then how I've used that through expeditions, adventures, and challenges ever since, and then break that down into what worked, why did it work, why was it important for that particular aspect.
So resilience is something you've actually sort of been working on post, sort of analysing why you've sort of been doing your exploring and your adventures and kind of working it all out as you're sort of putting yourself in hardship.
And trying to think what's in not just mine, but what's in the mindset of anybody that pushes themselves outside of the norm, whether that be in business or on an expedition, expeditions and adventures obviously in particular, but what gives that person the capability to carry on. You know, motivation's a part of it, but it's only one part. Resilience is a huge part.
So how would somebody become motivated if everything around them is going downhill? How does one, or keep being motivated?
Personally speaking, for me, it was all about objectives and goals. I had my objective, and then I developed goals. The objective was the point in time, or the place that I wanted to achieve at the point in time. And the goals were the stepping stones that give me progression, direction, motivation, and inspiration.
So you would like break your goals down into steps?
Absolutely. And the tougher it became, the more goals I set. And that's an easier way, smaller steps.
Okay, and then how does that fit in with resilience? Or what's the difference between resilience and motivation?
Resilience has got different categories altogether. Motivation is part of it. Objectives and goal setting is part of the resilience, the larger resilience picture. But there are other aspects that we'll fold in, and that'll come out in the talk. If I give it all away now, there's nothing for me to talk about in October. But,
okay, no, fair enough. I just wanted a little teaser of you know, how could somebody sort of develop resilience, or what would be a good strategy for somebody to adopt if they wanted to sort of go down that route?
That's what will come out in the talk, is to look at the pillars of resilience, that the different areas that you need to work upon to give yourself a resilient lifestyle, whether that's personally to do a challenge or just to live, or to do an expedition, or in business. There are a common area of pillars of resistance.
Okay. What's your you have a passion for exploring and traveling, so you've traveled to some of the sort of most awesome places in the world. What's been the most difficult challenge you've experienced in the outdoors, and how did you cope with that challenge?
The most difficult challenge, that's a very difficult and very broad spectrum question, because you've got different types of challenge. You've got physical challenge. You know, can I do 10 chin-ups, or can I only do 9? Can I walk 100 miles? Can I only walk 98? Whatever happens to be. But then you've also got the psychological challenge of performance. A big one is also how you deal with failure, because by its true nature, if you're going to explore, to do an adventure, to do a challenge and push your personal boundaries, then you will fail. And if you don't fail, then you're not trying hard enough to
push. I was going to say that, because it's part and parcel of the game you're in, is the failure, because if you're not failing, as you say, your goals aren't high enough.
Absolutely.
Because you want to be on the edge, don't you, of what you're capable of.
Exactly. But the way I look at it is everyone that goes out and fails isn't a failure per se. That they may have failed to achieve their objective, but they paved the way for the rest of us to do stuff.
Right.
It's an evolutionary process. The guy that first tried to fly a plane, no doubt, failed, or did fail. But now look at what we've got. You know, we've got these wonderful fighter jets above us all the time. I said that because one's just gone over.
Well, funny enough, I was watching a podcast with somebody talking about these proximity jumpers,
right,
where they sort of fly down the side of mountains.
Yeah, you don't want to fail too often at that.
No, and they were saying that the 60 pioneers are actually all dead now.
Right.
So you don't have a long life expectancy doing that.
Learn by somebody else's mistakes.
But they were the pioneers.
Exactly. No, somebody's got to go first. Always.
Yeah, no, exactly. So what was like the most fearful experience you've had on an adventure?
Again, it's all
Like,
these
have you nearly been killed, or did you think you might not make it?
I mean, that's happened a few times in both scenarios. It's a difficult. It sounds like a very easy question. What's the most fearful you've been? But every expedition, every adventure, every challenge carries a degree of risk, and with that degree of risk comes an element of fear.
Right, right.
And that element of fear makes sure that you go through all your skills and your drills properly, so that everything is done to the nth degree, and you therefore limit the chances of something going wrong.
But I think you truly test yourself when things go wrong or unexpected things happen, and then you rely, as you say, on your training and your drills that you've done in the past to get you through, because it's not something you can necessarily plan how to get through it when situations start arising.
Experience counts for a lot, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about when we start to explore resilience in Utrecht in October. But experience is a huge part. Experience and repetition.
So, and how do you train? What sort of training or preparation do you do for these kind of expeditions?
Physical training, it's just daily workouts.
Just down the gym kind of thing.
I tend not to train in a gym. I always train outdoors, because personally I feel that if I train outdoors, it makes me less precious about the weather. So I've got some weights outdoors. I'll run, I cycle, and you will find me outdoors lifting weights in the middle of a thunderstorm or a hailstorm. It doesn't matter.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Get you used to acclimatized to your environment, as they say.
It makes you less precious.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say to people who are fearful of exploring? And like movies like Into the Wild, they seem to be more like cautionary tales rather than inviting people to go and do them.
There's not much to fear but fear itself. If to use a very basic example, if you go out to cross the road, you don't just walk straight off the pavement. You look left and right because you know that there's going to be a risk. If you're going to go and do an adventure anywhere in the world of any kind, you identify the risks early, you learn what the risks are, and you take steps to manage those risks, just like looking left and right to cross the road. And that's kind of the best advice I can give people that say they're fearful. Just identify the risk, manage it. What can you do to limit that? And then get out there and make it happen, because you're only going to be here once.
Great attitude. We touched upon before where you have a passion for education, or not you as a teacher personally, but to inspire others to teach lessons that you've learned. How did that, or the link to education, how did that arise?
It kind of started right back in the early days. But when I was much younger, I did toy with the idea about becoming a teacher.
Okay, interesting.
And decided it wasn't the career for me, but I still had an interest in education. What I realized is that teachers and educators can use what I do in the classroom to help to reinforce lessons. So I partner with Microsoft Education as an example, and through Microsoft Education, then I can talk to anywhere 4,500, 5,000 children a month, all around the world through the Skype in the Classroom platform, as well as producing resources and videos that teachers can then just use and drop onto whatever subjects. Now, the audience that I get from that, I use to further my real passion in education, which is for universal education provision. So you've heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 UN goals?
Yeah, yeah.
Goal 4 is to do with provision of quality education for everyone, giving every child everywhere access. and that's my real passion. So when I engage with schools all around the world for everything else that I do, it's about educating those children that not everybody gets to go to school. It's about motivating those children to realize the benefits of helping every other child in the world go to school, inspiring them and empowering them to make a difference, because they can make a difference now, right now. But also these children that I'm talking to that are between, say, 10 and 16 years old, they will grow up to become the politicians and the business leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can make this happen.
It's what the world needs.
Absolutely. You know, if
there's too much of a divide, I think, and education is the key to closing that divide.
It's the key to so much, to lifting people from poverty, from hunger. It's the key to preventing radicalization.
How long have you been doing that? What sort of when did you start? When was that sort of your focus, or when did that begin?
I turned my passion for venture into my profession purely with nothing else a decade ago, 10 years ago this year. Before that, it was still there, and I still did a lot of things, but I wasn't going full time. And that was about the time that I also started my work in education. But then back in 2014, I happened across an organization based in Qatar, in Doha, that are involved with education provision. I spent a little time with them, learning from them. The program is called Educate a Child, learning about education provision around the world, and that really got me inspired and motivated to make a difference.
Okay, do you get involved with like physical activity education, like because the Western world's become quite prevalent in activity?
It has.
It has, yeah.
Again, in my early days, my career was in sport, so I'm quite passionate about people being active, having long-term healthy lifestyle habits. Part of that being activity. I do encourage people to get active outdoors. I do it through lots of different magazine articles that I write, through social media channels. The books that I've written are all about getting kids active outdoors. And obviously, if the kids are getting active outdoors, hopefully the entire family is doing it with them. So I'm quite passionate about that. It's very important, one, for the activity aspect, because it's a lot healthier, and two, because if we are all more connected with the environment and the world around us, then we've got a better chance of understanding it and looking after it.
Oh, exactly. So what advice do you give to people who like, because what we have to do is compete with modern technology and trends, and how do you convince somebody who wants to sit in front of their PlayStation, experience the outdoors, and how does one go about convincing kids of today to do something like that? What would your advice be there?
My personal opinion is that you cannot take away technology. You can't take away what kids love. So you've got to find a way to integrate it. As an example, I was teaching somebody to navigate quite recently, and this particular young person was stuck to their phone and Google Maps. Google Maps. I said, no, let's look for at least 3 areas of validation for every movement decision that we make. So if you want to look at your phone, look at your phone. But how does that tie up with the map? How does that tie up with the natural navigation clues, the way the wind's blowing, or whatever we happen to be looking at, what position of the sun or the stars? How does that all tie in together? And then you start to bridge the gaps.
Right.
I think that's the key. As we move forward, I think that's the key for success in getting people to be active outdoors and to enjoy the outdoors, is to not say that technology has no place, but to combine it and bring it together.
So this comes to sort of my last topic that I wanted to talk about, which is the sort of connection between human or mankind or people kind with nature, and how is that sort of relevant, and how is that achieved, and what experiences have you had in that?
That's a massively broad subject.
Yeah.
I guess, and experiences are very varied.
What would you say, like one reason why it's so important?
I think spending time outside it is important on many levels. One, because it's healthy. 2, because it gives you an appreciation of the world around us. You know, if you can start to understand how things move and how things work together, we've got a better chance of looking after the planet that we live on. There are a lot of mental health benefits of being outside and dragging yourself away from other environments.
Do you believe the government is doing enough in designing environments that enhance physical activity?
Physical activity, possibly. I'm involved with an organisation called the Royal Institute of Navigation. And within the Royal Institute of Navigation, there is what they call a special interest group, which looks at cognitive navigation.
Right.
So navigation can be altered through the built environment. Now, if you can alter the way that people navigate, move through a built environment, then you can also alter the way that they appreciate open spaces, and you should be able to alter the way that they get more exercise. Having said that, you cannot replicate nature. You can only take people so far.
Okay, well, I've come to the end of our podcast. So I hope, is there anything you want to ask me or anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I'm just looking forward to October. So I've been working away already on my presentation and trying to preempt as many questions as I possibly can. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It should be good fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in the flesh and rather than on Skype, and I'm sure it will. So on that note, I'll let you go and get back to the pub.
It's been great to meet you. Take care.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Bye.